Now, just a note that we make sure we use our microphones, of course, because we are live streaming and those online won't be able to hear us without them. Emergency procedures, they are on the screen, so please take note of them and make sure your phone is switched to silent. And if we could move to our opening karakia. Feel free to join me. Whakatakataka hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hiaki ana te atakura, he tio, hei huka, hei hauhu, ti hei mauri ora. Moving through to apologies, it looks like we have a full house. Fantastic. Now we'll move through to public comment. And we have Galen Hughes, who is the chairperson and trustee of Innovative Young Minds Charitable Trust, who's speaking to item 8B. Welcome, Galen. Now you have a total of 3 minutes, which includes any time for questions. Over to you.
Very good, thank you. Mayor Berry and councillors, I chair the Innovative Young Minds Trust, as you've just heard. I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate the Council for their investment and foresight when assisting with the creation of Innovative Young Minds back in 2017. And thank you, Kate, for the presentation up there. As you're aware, Innovative Young Minds was launched as a joint venture by Hutt City Council and Hutt Rotary back in 2017 to encourage diversity and equity in science, technology, engineering and high-end manufacturing, or STEM, while inspiring young women to study and move into STEM careers. It was also launched to showcase the many businesses involved in STEM here in the Hutt Valley. I'm proud to share that IYM now runs 3 successful programs per year, not just the one that was started out with back in 2017. We have IYM Online, that's run in April, nationwide, 100 young women take part. IYM Residential, our base program, and IYM Anytime, which was launched in September 2023 and which operates 24/7 for anyone, anywhere, anytime, and it's free. I'm also proud to say that we have a good number of businesses from around the Valley and the Wellington region wanting to work with us and assisting us financially, which is brilliant. We've influenced just under 1,000 young women since 2017 to become involved in STEM, and are beginning to hear and record and share their stories as they complete studies and enter the workforce. More and more of their stories will be shared in years to come. The variation in the original trust deed, which is with you before you today, put steps in place to future-proof our programs. It gives IYM operational independence and ensures we continue to proactively move forward as per our growth plan. You can be assured the trust's in good hands. We currently have 9 appointed trustees with a good range of experience, including 2 alumni. We have an alumni council comprising 6 energetic, creative young alumni who have regular input at both the strategic and operational level. And just quietly, they're my succession plan. It is my hope that you support the recommendation of your officers and approve this variation to the Innovative Young Minds Charitable Trust. And once again, thank you for your investment, your foresight, and your belief in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Galen.
Cool.
Very succinct, and thank you for the work that you do. Okay, any questions from members? Excellent. Okay.
It's a rubber stamp.
Oh.
Right.
We love our rubber stamps.
Thank you.
No, very good. Thank you so much. Okay. Now, under standing orders, I'm just going to use Presidents of Business, which will bring forward the Local Government New Zealand report. So in accordance with Standing Order 10.4, I call Presidents to 8A, which is Tatu, Local Government New Zealand 4-monthly report, and that's because we have Susan Freeman-Green online, just to be able to allow her to get back to her many duties as well. So Susan, you with us?
Kia ora koutou. Lovely to see you all. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can. So we'll pass it over to you for any comments you'd like to make with the report that we've got, and then we'll open it up for any questions that councillors may have. But we really do appreciate you making the time to speak to this.
Thank you. Look, I'm delighted to be here. Just a quick overview of the report. And it's something that is relatively new. Sorry, if I sound distracted, it's because I keep getting these messages saying Zoom quit unexpectedly, but assuming you can all hear and see me.
Yes, yep.
Yes. Okay. So we're doing these 3 times a year, and the purpose of them is to give councils the chance to see a little bit more under the bonnet of what we do and what we're working on in service of members all the time. We've encouraging councils to put it on their agenda, just so that you've got an opportunity to just reflect or see or read it. And we have made ourselves available to come and talk to you or answer any questions if you want. So that's the purpose here. We structure it around our 3 pillars, the 3 pillars that have been agreed by National Council, which are to champion local government, which includes all our advocacy pieces, and to connect local government, and of course to support local government. It's interesting when I reflected back on it, we do it, that how much has happened even since June. So this period for this report was from March to June. So we keep busy with our small team. We in the last few months, in this report time, we have had under the champion piece. We've worked on the city and regional deals framework. We've had a lot of engagement in the whole government relations space, and you can see details of that. We have pushed hard on Māori wards. I'm not expecting that to change much. Significant media work, working on the water space, obviously advocating for the emergency works review to have some changes to what's in the consultation document. And just yesterday, your mayor and I participated in the early stages of Nick Smith's work on electoral reform, including the 4-year term. I can talk more to that, but I will answer your queries in a second. On the Connect piece, we're full steam ahead to conference, which is gearing up super well. It's obviously in Tākina, so no excuses. You can all be there, hopefully, subject to budget, Campbell. We are in the midst of speaker briefings. We have good traction with our sponsorship, and we're looking to really re-push the whole localism piece and show how that can provide benefits to Aotearoa as a whole, and actually help this government unlock some of the economic and other benefits that they're wanting to see from councils. Sam and I have done 81% of our council visits, with all the rest scheduled for post-conference. So that's been an absolute mine of information for us in terms of understanding what's happening in each region, each council, each district. And in the support space, we're seeing more and more engagement with Our Corner. Now National Council has agreed to make that accessible to all members. We've got a number of new courses either just about to come online or have come online, and really encourage you to investigate those if you haven't already. We are continuing to do a bit of work on the whole safety security space, because that is clearly a real and genuine problem for far too many members around the motu. And I've seen an article even today, headlined by Dan Gordon of WIMAC, one of our National Council members, talking about this and how off-putting it is for people to actually stand or stay in the sector with some of the challenges you have. I think that's enough from me for an intro. I'm happy to answer queries.
Thank you, Susan. And you'll be very pleased to know we'll have a good contingent at conference, particularly given we're able to obviously not have all of the costs you usually would when the conference is elsewhere. So good opportunity for us. Okay, any questions from members? Deputy Mayor Lewis.
Thank you so much for this report. I think congratulations for it. I think it's fantastic. And I'd just like to also thank you for the work, for the Arcona work that's happening. I joined a meeting this morning, or lunchtime, which was exciting. Over 300 members had signed up for that one. And it was nice to see local representation there in the form of Helmut from Ngāti Toa. So it was really good. And you've got some great content that you're sharing with everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. I will pass that on to the team.
Other questions? Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, it is just another comment, Susan. While we've got you on the line there, I just wanted to acknowledge, I know there's a lot of advocacy work going on, so we appreciate it all, but in particular, the work that was done around the rates rise conversation. I really feel like this year is the year that our ratepayers kind of caught up to the fact that these are national issues that we're tackling here and national challenges across the country. It's not just that Hutt City Council's out on a limb. We might have got out there further or faster than some other councils who are catching up now, but certainly I can see in discourse on Facebook and places like that people are beginning to understand why it is that our rates are increasing so quickly. So yeah, thanks in particular for the work around that conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. We put a lot of thought and time into that because we thought it is one of these issues that needs that sustained national advocacy approach. And we've generated like over 100 unique media stories on it, and also comment in local papers when mayors and councillors ask us to do that as well.
Councillor Brown.
Kia ora, Susan. It is question time, but I too am going to acknowledge you for the work that you've led and supported around the Māori wards. You're quite right. You gave it a really good pushback, as well as converting the conversation to the wider Aotearoa. So thank you for leading that work, and to the President, Vice President as well. But it has been really amazing to see the work that came out, including the letter that was signed by so many mayors that you led. So thank you for that work.
Thank you.
Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, at risk of giving you and LGNZ too much of a big head, I did want to acknowledge the work you've done. Obviously, I've been around LGNZ now 8-9 years, and I really feel like in the last 18 months things have significantly stepped up. I don't know if it's because we've got a spy on the inside that's helping drive a lot of this change, but you really just want to acknowledge the work that you and your team have been doing. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Really appreciate those comments. They make a big difference to the team, so I will be passing them on.
Thank you, Susan. Really appreciate you taking the time.
It's a pleasure. Anytime. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Okay, moving through to our recommendations, which is receives and notes. So we will receive and note the Local Government New Zealand 4-monthly report attached as Appendix 1. I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Great. Okay, now moving through to the mayoral statement. So thank you for your indulgence, and apologies because straight after this you do have a presentation from me as well. So there's a little bit of talking from me in this meeting. But before I get started, I just wanted to, I thought I'd give a brief overview of what's been happening over the last couple of months. Of course, we had our long-term plan, so well done to everyone. We unanimously signed that plan off, which was fantastic. And I just want to acknowledge again the efforts without repeating myself from previous meetings. This was the most challenging plan I've been part of in my 4 terms as a 2 terms as a councillor and then 2 terms as mayor. With cost escalation, the need to address historic underinvestment and balancing affordability for our residents and businesses, we as a council, I think, had a real challenge on our hands. And it isn't easy. Like, I would say that my experience yesterday of walking through our reception and seeing a number of our residents with their rate bills in their hands. Some of them come in because that's their process and they're there to pay it. But you could see some genuine concern and feeling very unsettled with the increase that was there. So I think all of us are feeling that. I've certainly had a number of messages, and we take that really seriously. So it's a pretty tough time out there generally. And the thing that I would say is that when you talk to people about that, what they will share with you is all of the other cost challenges and pressures that they are under, and they feel as if this is just an addition to that and the pressure that it's building for their household. But I just want to acknowledge that up front. Thank you to Jenny Lifshitz and the finance team, our corporate planning and communications and engagement team, and democratic services in particular, of course, but everyone who's been part of building that long-term plan. I think you get, a few weeks rest and then we're into the next annual plan or something like that. Or no, I shouldn't say that in jest because it's kind of true. But again, finally, I just want to thank the 1,700 submissions we received, and full of really diverse and invaluable thoughts that were put forward by the community. I think it was a pretty stellar effort by people out there to engage and share their thoughts with us. We announced an extra 2.8 million into cracking down on leaks, and of course, you would have seen that we're making some good progress on that, down from over 800 to 333. Nearing our target of 108, which allows Wellington Water to respond to lower level leaks within 20 days. So some good progress, but more to still be done. We know it's not just about fixing leaks as well. It's our large capital renewal program, which is starting again to take shape as the new financial year ticks over, and we've approved that LTP. Last week, we turned the sod at the Avalon Skateboard Park. And that is looking really cool. So thank you for all of the councillors who were able to be there, and Deputy Mayor in acknowledging that particular project. It's great to see things move with some pace. And it's also great to see all of the really positive comments from those, particularly young people who will be utilising that facility. That's been awesome. We said goodnight to the Moira Library at a whakamo whare, laying the building's mana to rest until the new whare is ready to be occupied, and that was quite a moving ceremony for those who were able to make it as well. We know that the library has been that particular site has been a great community space for nearly 40 years, but it will now be replaced by an exciting new space that meets the growing needs of Moira and allows for more flexibility in the future as well. The new building will be delivered by Niche Modular Construction, which is only 5 minutes down the road from where the building will be located. A local business building a local community asset is a pretty cool outcome, and something that's we're privileged to be able to do here in the Hutt, because we've got so many great businesses doing these types of things. We hit a milestone in our goal to plant 114,000 natives and plants through Mauri Tupu, planting for the future, and that's when we got to around 10,000 natives that had been planted across the city, but in particular Moira, Stokes Valley and Wainuiomata as well. So that's a count from the start of this term, just so you're wondering how we got to 10,000 so quick. But obviously a lot of work to be done as we reach that particular goal. It was great to join a number of you at Arakuta School, with Arakuta School at Arakuta Park. I'm quite lucky I get to drive past each day, and I'm keeping an eye on these particular trees and shrubs to make sure they're looked after, and I can report that they are thus far. But it was great to be there with young people, and also at Delaney Park in Stokes Valley, where we had a good contingent of the local community come out on a Saturday morning to help plant. As you'll be aware, lastly, I was selected for the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative, and I was fortunate enough to spend a week last week with 39 mayors from 11 countries and 5 continents on a program in New York. I'm really excited to think about how that opportunity for myself can be leveraged for all of us and ultimately for our city. They ask you to basically come up with a priority that you want to nail, and my focus area is how we can best leverage off the opportunities ahead for Lower Hutt with Te Wai Takamori o Te Awa Karangi, Riverlink project, a new regional water services entity and what that will look like in our particular in the Lower North Island, and how we manage development and infrastructure investment with our changing climate. So how can we bring these different things together and make the most out of benefits for our city. So I'm looking forward to, like I say, sharing that in due course. Great. Okay, so that is my mayoral statement. Now we'll move through to item 5, which is my presentation on the Infrastructure New Zealand delegation update. I should have spread these out because it's going to feel like I'm talking heaps. So what I would say in that is if you do have questions, I'm happy to take them as we go to break up any, I'm listening to my voice for too long. Okay. So the delegation, as many of you will know, focused on 2 key priority areas, and that was around water infrastructure and delivery and city and regional deals. Across our 6 days in London, Manchester and Cardiff, for me it became incredibly evident how similar the problems are with infrastructure, funding and financing and structure that works best for local communities. The context is very different, but the issues are very similar. In this presentation, I'll focus on my reflections on water in the interests of time, and I'll share some of my reflections on city and regional deals in depth another time for you, just so this doesn't go for too long. But I suppose what I would say on city and regional deals, some high-level reflections for me were that true devolution of powers and responsibilities takes decades. It isn't necessarily transferable to a New Zealand context and what they've been able to do, particularly in the UK. We do need to look closely at ourselves in order to put ourselves in a position to negotiate a deal with government, whether that means reorganisation, whether that means other aspects of how we operate. I think that is the only way we're going to be able to put ourselves into a legitimate position for government to negotiate seriously with us when it comes to devolution and additional funding abilities. And that's the main point I would cover there. So I'll go into water. So first off, we met with Ofwat, who are basically the economic regulator for water companies in England and Wales, and Water UK, who are the membership body representing all of the water industry across the UK and Ireland. Basically, they're a bit like Water New Zealand, for those of you who would know them. We also met with Welsh Water, which has an interesting not-for-profit model, which I'll talk about briefly in a moment, but is still very similar to how companies in England are structured. We spoke with a number of different organisations who also spoke about their experiences of working within the water sector. As you'll see there, the water services in the UK were privatised in 1989. And I suppose there is a significant difference between the companies, the 16 regional monopoly companies and the 11 offering water and sewage services company. There are 16 monopoly companies providing different services, and they're quite different in scale. So, for example, Thames Water, serving water and waste in London, boasts annual revenues of 2.2 billion and serves 16 million customers. In contrast, Portsmouth focuses solely on water services in a southern coastal area with annual revenues of 40 million and a customer base of 700,000. So I suppose I share that because each of the regional companies is quite different in scale and responsibilities. Flood protection is a shared responsibility amongst a number of different agencies. So that's quite different, again, to us and having obviously regional councils or unitary authorities that look after that. Successes since 1989, because it is quite easy to look to the UK and think they're a basket case, and with the sewage overflows and the things that you see in the headlines. But there has actually been some quite significant success. So leakage is down about a third since a peak in the mid-1990s with renewal programs and other initiatives and measures put in place. In 2017, 99.96% of drinking water in England and Wales met European and national standards. So they don't have the same types of issues that we see with boil water notices and water quality in parts of New Zealand. More than $200 billion has been invested, and the cost of a litre of tap water supplied and taken away is less than half a penny. In the early 1990s, customers were more than five times as likely to be at risk of an unplanned supply interruption. 8 times more likely to be at risk of having their house flooded by sewage, and well over 100 times more likely to be at risk of low water pressure. So I suppose that just gives you a bit of an indication of the improvements that have been made. Yet there are some major issues facing, was kind of a little bit ahead of myself, but there are some major issues facing the UK water sector. What you hear on the news is absolutely true around raw sewage discharges into rivers and lakes. This is a huge challenge, and water companies have rightly faced widespread criticism. When it comes to overflows, the context in England and Wales is very different to New Zealand. Our infrastructure features, of course, a separate stormwater and sewage pipes, basically. In the UK, they're combined. Something I didn't realise until we were over there. So basically, all of the stormwater and sewage goes through the same pipes. So you can imagine that if with increasing weather events and other issues, it's going to cause all sorts of problems. Victorian era thinking and how they did their infrastructure. Okay, sorry, I'll go back. So the regulatory framework. One of my biggest takeaways from the delegation was the importance of getting regulation right. In the UK, I would say that the regulatory settings has led to a number of challenges within the water sector. On one hand, you have Ofwat as the economic regulator, which is setting the price limits and performance expectations for water companies, and it aims to sort of balance investment needs with fair consumer prices. I think everyone agrees they're absolutely needed, and we are obviously going to have some form of an economic regulator. On the other hand, you have the environmental regulators, which enforce environmental standards. And what we heard from water companies, well, again, they didn't always cover themselves in glory, is that they were often caught in a difficult position. Water companies would be told that they need to invest more to deal with some of the wider environmental outcomes and overflow issues. They would go to the economic regulator every 5 years, and I'll talk about that in a second, and say, hey, we need to charge our customers more, and they would say no. So they were caught in this sort of death spiral in some areas of how that worked. So that was, I suppose, a really interesting issue of which we reflected on the delegation. And talking about how that worked, I suppose, was Ofwat every 5 years conducts a price review, and it was quite timely. So they were basically about to release their 2024 price review, which I suppose now reflected a whole heap of changing attitudes and expectations around overflows and sewage into streams and oceans, where clearly the community's expectations had changed and it had been heavily politicised. So within that 2024 change, they had a particular focus on customer expectations on service and environmental outcomes, affordability challenges, climate change and deliverability. And what they proposed was a spending package of 88 billion between 2025 and 2030. And what that has meant is that consumers are facing an average bill increase of 21% over 5 years, but for some areas it's up to 44%. So I suppose they're going through a bit of a correction because they hadn't dealt with some of these issues in the past. It all kind of sounds a little bit familiar with some of these numbers. Talking to, I suppose, the context of other issues that they're facing, water supply. So it's basically sewage overflows and water supply are the two sort of wide strategic issues they're trying to tackle at the moment. And what was interesting is what appears to have worked quite successfully is the formation of a joint up regulator approach of what they call RAPID. It was formed in 2019. And is a partnership of the water regulators aiming to address the need for new water supply options in England and Wales due to increasing water consumption and demands. And it focuses on facilitating large-scale water projects. In recent years, that joint-up approach has been sort of recognised as a real benefit to getting things done. One thing that blew my mind was that I believe it's been 32 years since England or Wales had built a water reservoir. 32 years. So, and that was down to often funding constraints and local communities bitterly opposing reservoirs in their neighbourhoods as well. But it was just interesting to see how, 32 years since they've even done that. So they've got a massive challenge around that water supply, storage issues. Welsh Water. This was what I was quite interested in when I seen the agenda for the delegation of how they operate. So they are basically the same structure as England. They're a private company, but they have no shareholders. The money all goes back into the customers. So no shareholders, financed in private capital markets, no government support, no takeover risk, no diversification risks, asset-backed financing structure, competitive outsourcing of operational activities, and all financial surpluses used are for the benefit of customers. So they don't have the same sort of, I suppose, quite fairly, criticisms of these water companies making millions of dollars and giving it to their shareholders into bonuses for their CE, because they are actually putting it back into the customers. So over £570 million has been returned and reinvested back into the company since 2001 with their approach into assets, lower bills and support for vulnerable customers or lower income customers. And while they don't have the same type of shareholder pressure, which they would, over there they would argue is a benefit for driving performance, that they have focused on other areas to other pressures, such as reputation of the board company and getting the right governance structure and accountability in place. I haven't got the names of the people who are on this particular board, but they've got some high-flying, really reputable people because of the way it's been structured, and that helps to keep the company held to account because they want their reputations to stay intact. And they have not, as I said, they have not seen the same types of criticisms that England water companies have. However, in many cases, they are sort of middle of the table in regards to their actual performance on different issues. So it's not like their model has driven them to be at the top of performance, but it has, obviously, there is a different perception of how the company works. Okay, so key takeaways from me. These are my reflections from my time. So getting the regulation right. I think that's probably pretty self-explanatory from what I just explained. Taumata Arawai, our economic regulator, ComCom, whatever that looks like, regional council's role, and they must have a structure that requires them to work together in setting the operating environment for any Greater Wellington entity. They must, of course, be independent, but they must be working together. Otherwise, the new entity is going to get caught in the middle. What appears to be a major failure of the England and Wales regulatory model has been one, as I said before, has been one regulator telling a water company what to do, while the other telling them basically the reverse. So we just cannot be in that type of position. Number two, and I found this interesting, was around the competitive tension and benchmarking. That has been effective, and I don't think you necessarily need privatisation, which we all agree is off the table and should remain off the table. That competitive tension has definitely generated some positive outcomes. It's also helped innovate or get companies to innovate in how they provide services for their customers. And that is something that we could obviously do in New Zealand with these new entities that are structured, to be able to hold them to account and to be able to measure their performance. Professional governance, removal of politics in the day-to-day. That's probably not a surprise with some of the conversations we've already had in New Zealand, but that clearly has made a real difference for them. They have fully professional and independent boards, and the scale of some of these entities certainly attracts highly skilled governors. While again, they're not perfect, but that has made a real difference. Regulators independent and but joined up, touched on that. So I've got some additional notes which I'll share with people. And then number 5 is particularly, my reflections were we're on the right track with how we address the water supply issues and the acute water shortage that we potentially face. The key thing I heard from everyone was data. Information is absolutely key to being able to get on top of your leaks issue. And we have that fundamental issue with our water meters that we truly can't measure and optimize our investment. So they just kept on being blown away when I talked about the amount of water we were losing and that we didn't have water meters and the likes. But also they did have some really good other innovative ways which we knew to tackle this problem, but they didn't replace the fundamental need for meters. I think that was the key message from them. And I think that's it. Great. Okay. Is there any questions? No. Councillor Salinger.
If I can just make a comment. That was very interesting, so thank you very much. Will we be able to get a copy, well, this is a question, I suppose, a copy of the presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And finally, just to pass on, I did receive a comment about an article you put out post-trip, which I thought was a good one, and this was from a very informed individual, very complimentary of the article as well, so I'm just passing on that to you.
Thank you. We have got the op-ed which we're going to attach to this as well if anyone hasn't seen that, so it talks about these issues. Councillor Mitchell.
Yeah, just with the regards to the water supply challenge and your final comments that we're on the right track, and obviously securing our supply by getting rid of leaks and things like that are important. I was wondering in the UK if there's anything more progressive going on other than, in terms of collecting water, other than taking it from rivers and relying on rainfall. Is there anything different that they're doing in terms of actually where they're gathering water from in the first place?
Probably didn't delve into that particular issue, but the cool thing from this delegation is the connections we've made is that I've already thought of the person I could potentially talk to around that. So yeah, we'll come back to you on that, but it didn't come up, no. Councillor Brown.
Apart from the water meters, was there anything else while you were there that appeared to be a real no-brainer on something that we don't do, which would make us more efficient going forward with whatever model we have?
Yeah, one really good example was in Cardiff, where they have basically taken I suppose it's a little bit of the sort of sponge city principles, right? One of the issues that they identified is that obviously with water going into the sewage system, they have more overflow. So how can we capture water which is falling in streets and put it into plantings in other areas? And they invested around £5 million across about, I think, 3 or 4 blocks, where basically they capture all of this water to go into feeding bushes and plants and the likes in that local area. And that has saved them, a whole heap of other costs and environmental outcomes. So like I suppose what they had done is they'd sort of done that analysis around actually this investment is worthwhile. But on top of that, they're also able to improve the walkability and the neighbourhood itself. And they had photos before and after, and I'll share the case study of kind of car dominant neighbourhoods turned into places actually where people were kids were playing in the streets and utilising it far better. So I suppose it's just sort of putting that lens of how do we make our places more attractive as well as managing better, stormwater being a big issue. And we still haven't sort of grappled with how we're going to deal with stormwater investment and those challenges over the next decade. Cool. Okay. Thank you. And I should have given a shout out to Susan from LGNZ because they've been great in also supporting myself being able to go over and reduce some of the cost on us and being able to obviously myself share these findings with the wider local government sector, which was positive. So I'll make sure I do that in acknowledging her. Okay, now we will move through to conflict of interest declarations. Any conflicts of interest to declare? No, great. We'll move through to item 7, which is committee minutes with recommended items. And first up, we have the traffic subcommittee from the 26th of June. So I'd like to invite Chair of the Traffic Subcommittee, Councillor Shaw, to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
Thank you. Before I do that, just like to make a comment about the Hebden Crescent, which is part of a Wakakotahi, New Zealand Transport Safety program for State Highway 2 between Theviston and Petone. And they undertook a lot of the consultation with affected people around that. So I'd like that the minutes of the Komiti Itiara Waka Traffic Committee held on the 26th of June 2024 be adopted, pages 12 to 19, with the exception of items 5A to 5D.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Parkin. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, now moving to the balance of the items. Just checking, is there any questions or any item that members would like to discuss separately? Otherwise, we'll take them in bulk. No? Great. Okay. So, Councillor Shaw, if you would like to move items 5A through to 5. You got it? Yep.
Yep. Okay, then if I'd like to move items 5A to D, if they'd like to be adopted.
Seconder? Councillor Barrett, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Moving through the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee from the 9th of July, page 29 of the agenda. So I'd like to invite Councillor Mitchell to move the adoption of the balance of the minutes.
Kia ora, I move that the minutes of the Committee Ratonga Rangatopu Me Te Rautaki, the Policy, Finance and Strategy Committee meeting held on 9th of July 2024 be adopted. That's pages 29 to 37 of your agendas, with the exception of item 5.
Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 5.
And also move item 5, approval to consult on the control of alcohol in public places bylaw. It's on page 31 of the agenda.
Cool. Seconder? Councillor Morgan, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the minutes of the Komiti Hanganga, the Infrastructure and Regulatory Committee meeting held 11th of July 2024 be adopted. They're on pages 65 to 77, with the exception of items 5A to 5C.
Seconder, Councillor Stallinger, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 5A.
Item 5A is approval to consult on an alcohol fees bylaw so that ratepayers are not subsidising this area at all. I'd like to move that approval.
Seconded by Councillor Tupou. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried.
Item 5B is approval for the council to consult on a review of the local alcohol policy, one of 3 strands of work that we're doing in the alcohol area. I'd like to move that.
Seconder, Deputy Mayor Lewis. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried.
And item 5C is the Jackson Street Three Waters renewal options following our philosophy of dig once. I'd like to move that.
Seconder, Deputy Councillor Stallinger. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay. We have covered off the local government report. So now we go to item B under miscellaneous, which is on page 141 of the agenda, and that is the variation to the Innovative Young Minds Charitable Trust deed. Brad, anything you'd like to say?
No, I'm just happy to take the paper as read and answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? No, I'll move the recommendations, which is notes as a noting recommendation first off, and then to approve a variation to the Innovative Young Minds Trust deed attached as Appendix 1 to the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Edwards, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Okay, now we move through to remits for the LGNZ AGM. And this is on page 156 of the agenda. Angela Gordon, if you'd like to come forward. who is our Senior Policy Advisor, of course. Any comments you'd like to make? And then we can go through them.
I didn't really have very many comments at all, just to say that we had put together a list of suggestions from subject matter experts across the council, from officers, for you to consider before you vote at the AGM.
Any questions just on that? It is all pretty self-explanatory. No? Okay. So what we'll do now is move through to the remits, which we have. Now, first remit is on representation reviews. Any comments on that? Thoughts? I'm happy to sort of take from the floor if anyone wants to say we're happy to support or not. And then we comfortable with what the remit is here? Yes. Okay. So we'll just sort of go through it, give it, and then do a recommendation at the end. Community services card. It's remit number 2. Yes. Comfortable? Okay. Tick. Remit 3, which is the local government constituencies and wards should not be subject to referendum. Councillor Stallinger.
I'll just make a comment here because members may remember I was kind of conflicted when the whole issue of Maori wards came up. I do see this as a different issue and feel it's important to support this myself because of really preserving the right of the elected representatives of the city to determine what's right for our city. So I'm happy to support it. Just while I'm speaking, I'll mention the following remit. It's probably for much the same reasons I would be against the next remit on the list, because really I feel that takes away or the right of the elected members of the day to be able to resolve something by entrenching it in that way.
Okay, so we'll just deal with remit 3 at the moment, so we're happy. Tick. Remit 4, so Councillor Stallinger has put a fair point on the table. Any discussion on that? Councillor Brown.
I support it, but I totally understand where Councillor Stallinger is coming from, that we need to be able to make local decisions. But I think the last few months has shown anything is that, particularly with Māori, they're always vulnerable to change, and to see a specific ward get plucked out when there's many other wards, such as rural, etc., I support it being entrenched so that people don't have to go through this pain in the future.
Councillor Tupou.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too sort of commend remit number 4, and that really provides certainty once representatives and communities have spoken and see that they support a Māori ward. We need to provide that certainty moving forward so that the ward's not subject to the political whim or wind of the day. And so we don't want to therefore establish a Māori ward only for that to be changed 3 years later. So we need to provide that certainty on the back of remit 3. Kia ora.
Any other? Councillor Mitchell.
Sorry, got the wrong button there. Yeah, just to also support this one. It doesn't mean that, if you read it, it doesn't mean that if a council adopts Māori wards, they can never remove them. It just requires a supermajority rather than a simple council vote. What it does do, in my read of it anyway, is to take Māori ward conversations out of a 6-yearly cycle of representation review, which is currently what they're trapped in if you read the legislation. If we adopt a Māori ward, have a referendum, which agrees to keep a Māori ward, it is only for the next 2 elections, and then the conversation rears its head again every 6 years. And we've certainly seen in the past, and I think likely to see in the future, the kind of damage that kōrero can have. So kind of trapping it into a 6-year cycle and making that happen to communities over and over and over again, potentially, I think some degree of entrenchment. It's not irreversible, but some degree of entrenchment, and just pulling it out of that cycle of regular review is a useful thing to do.
Councillor Parkin, then Councillor Dyer.
Yeah, just reflecting on Councillor Stallinger's point about his feeling that it removes the ability for councils to make the decisions. Actually, these councils have already made those decisions. So for me, it's actually supporting those councils who've already made the decisions. And like Councillor Mitchell said, it doesn't remove the ability for you to have those changes to Māori wards. It just requires that you keep them, which pulls that off the table and as Councillor Mitchell said, can create some pretty uncomfortable and unpleasant and unfortunate conversations that we're seeing already and we'll see again.
Yeah, I was going to make the exact same points Councillor Parkin just made, that this only applies to the councils that have already chosen to have them. When I first read it, I had the exact same thoughts as Councillor Stallinger. Number 3 saying that councils decide, then number 4 on the first read was like we're requiring them, entrenching them to all councils, but when you read through the detail, it's only the ones that have already got them, and there is a pathway to actually get rid of them in the future. So entrenchment of Māori ward seats for local government probably isn't the right title for it, but reading through the detail, I'm comfortable to support this one.
I think Councillor Morgan.
Kia ora, just like to tautoko the other comments, fully support this going through, thanks.
I think my only concern with this, I mean, I in principle support it and I'm quite comfortable to support it. The only challenge I have is that my view is like we need to treat all wards the same, and this actually does put a specific entrenchment on Māori wards, and the argument we are making to government is that actually, if you're going to have a poll, then have a poll on general wards, rural wards, or the Wainuiomata ward or whatever, like it's, sorry to pick out Wainuiomata, Councillor Brown, but that's the challenge for me. And then in this breath, and that had significant support, as you mentioned, around 50 plus mayors and chairs supporting that sort of position. Whereas this is kind of saying, actually, well, we want a further entrenchment on a specific ward. So it's just a bit inconsistent with that view, which I think is quite a strong one. So yeah, so I'm 50-50 on that for that reason. But any other comments, Councillor Stallinger?
Thank you. And just trying to be helpful here, I think if both these remits are passed, there is a contradiction, because remit 3 says LGNZ lobbies central government to ensure that Māori wards and constituencies are treated the same as all other wards. So at the meeting, the AGM, or when these are put, some tweaking of the words may help avoid that contradiction. Otherwise, LGNZ may look like they're contradicting themselves when they present these to government.
As a way forward, could I suggest that we leave it for the delegates on this matter? Because I think there is I think it's a very good point, there is a contradiction here. So if we're comfortable with myself, Councillor Dyer, Councillor Parkin and Councillor Barrett to take into account the debate, and there might possibly be some amendments and then decide on that basis. I could say that on probably there appears to be a majority view for support, but I think it just gives us a bit of flexibility. Is that okay? Councillor Brown?
Just a question on the remits when they go forward. Does each remit need to be in line with other remits? Can both be true?
I don't think they have to be, but I think this is, I can't recall a situation like this before, which is a little bit unique. It's two different solutions trying to solve a problem, right? And they contradict. Yeah. Councillor Parkin?
Just wondering if we could wordsmith a potential proposal and amendment to it.
We could take that offline and we could do that. Yep. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just a quick comment on the difference between the two proposals here. Proposal 3 clearly states that their intention is to align Māori wards with other wards in our system and treat them the same in our system. Number 4 is a bit different actually, and it's mentioned there in the last paragraph of background and context. This one's about aligning the Māori ward system with the Māori electorate system in Parliament. So they are trying to achieve different things. They're really both trying to achieve kind of equal treatment of Māori wards in a different way. So perhaps a discussion can be had actually with the two people whose remits these are, the two parties whose remits these are, about a more consistent position for LGNZ to take.
Yep. I think it's a really good suggestion. So we could, as a first step, I could email on this particular issue, both proposers, and ask that, hey, have they considered coming together to talk about one remit? And then if we allow for flexibility of the delegates to vote at the AGM. Sound good? Okay, great. Awesome. Moving through to remit 5, which is the graduated driver licensing system. Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, a little bit puzzled by this one because it's, as is noted later on in our reports, the comments from officers, fees have been changed. They've changed on 8th of April and for pretty good reasons too. There is, in practice, it has shown that if you make it totally free, then the system gets abused and causes backlogs and so on. I'm not quite sure what the remit's trying to achieve. If there was a remit that says that LGNZ advocates strongly to central government to beef up resources for driver licence testing, which clearly is absolutely clogged, I'd have no trouble supporting that. And much as it looks quite interesting to see that there's a pilot program proposed in Ashburton to try and do something about the backlog that they've got, you wouldn't want, well, I'm not sure it's good for local government to be pushing too hard in this area for fear that, central government will say, well, you do it then. Another one of these unfunded mandates. So I have my qualms about this remit.
Yeah. I kind of had the view of I'm not quite sure what we were asking them to do by saying yes. Yeah. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, just to speak to that, certainly been very well aware of the pressure on our driver licensing system because of the fee structure, and that's something that's been addressed. There are other parts to this remit, and when you read through it, LGNZ advocate for better preparation of young people for driver's licence testing. I can't think of any reason to oppose that. I think perhaps the most important one to local government, not necessarily to us, is greater testing capacity in key locations throughout New Zealand. And that's certainly been an issue in provincial parts of New Zealand where some people have to drive 3 hours just to sit a test. So certainly supportive of those other things. Maybe time has intervened on the fees thing, but certainly those other things I think are things that our council should support.
Okay. Do we want to, what's our view on this? Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mayor Barry. In support of the intended kaupapa, but I think if the delegates seek clarification from the movers of the remit before the hui may be useful. I think their intention is there, but it may be a bit caught up in localism to a very local extent in Ashburton, and maybe it's missing the kind of the more global national scene. I've done a little bit of work in this space locally here in Te Awa Kairangi, and we have different challenges, some of them that are similar for our rangatahi accessing driver licensing, but I'd want whatever remit is passed to have more of a national focus that impacts on all rangatahi and kind of looks at the wider barriers, and maybe that's an easier piece to advocate for LGNZ rather than it being as place-based as what's been described.
Okay. Anyone want to suggest an option? Councillor Edwards?
Something simple like Local Government New Zealand advocates that the driver licensing testing system is properly resourced so that there aren't backlogs that are a hindrance to young people obtaining their licence, which is what everyone wants to see.
Comfortable with that? Councillor, if you put that in an email to Councillor Brown.
While I support the intent, I just keep thinking this is not our wheelhouse and we are doing other things because it relates directly to local government. If we were to look at this, there's a lot of other issues that are affecting rangatahi elderly that are central government mandated. If this goes through, I could think of 3 others at the top of my head that would be, in my view, more important, but still central government led. I'm just not sure that it sits with us. This is just advocacy more than anything, remit.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, I think it acknowledges a number of these over time have always been sort of advocacy pieces rather than this is the role of council. Yeah. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I mean, I still think we should support our council colleagues in this remit, even if it is for advocacy. I think just in terms of wording, I don't think it's about clearing backlogs. As I said, there are other issues for people to sit testing. Yeah, it is about resourcing. It's about where you can take tests, when you can take them, how accessible they are. Just noting too, it is proposed by Ashburton District Council, but already supported by at least half a dozen other councils there before it's come to council. And, you know, we could have remits on all manner of things, it's true. And in fact, we're welcome to make remits on all manner of things, and our council has chosen not to. Ashburton Council and 6 others have chosen to put a remit forward on this kaupapa, and on the kaupapa itself, I think we should be supportive.
Okay, Councillor Morgan.
Yeah, kia ora. I also think we should support it. I think there are a lot of layers in here, though, that haven't been articulated, perhaps. And I think that in our local communities, that the barriers to our young ones and rangatahi getting their licences, there are so many different barriers that continue to come up. So I think the more that we can look at some of these initiatives and support those, I think we might see a bigger flow-on effect and more support to enable everyone to get their licence and to have no constraints or barriers that many are currently experiencing.
Okay, so what I'll do is I think there's a in principle support here, and Councillor Edwards, if you'd like to put your words in an email to myself, which we can just have in our back pocket, but we'll just say support at this point in time, generally. And then just, again, probably a bit of flexibility for the delegates in regards to the... Because what happens every time is that we have these conversations, they always end up happening on the floor as well. If we're asking these questions, others will be asking them as well. Yep, Councillor Edwards.
I was just going to say, I'll work with Councillor Mitchell, who's very good with words and has got some good ideas, and we'll email you something.
Great. Sounds good. Perfect. Okay. Moving through to Remit 6, proactive lever to mitigate the deterioration of unoccupied buildings. Councillor Tupou.
Mr. Mayor, I think this is a positive remit. Over the years, we've heard recounts in the community, and we've seen for ourselves certain buildings and shops neglected across our city. And but we are restrained with the legislative tools that we have to remedy those. And so, Mr. Mayor, I think Mayor Stoltz from Gisborne said that you know, this impacts negatively on regional prosperity. So what are the opportunities moving forward to engage with those landowners and perhaps even looking at other opportunities? I think it's mentioned housing or accommodation. So I've certainly had friends who have looked at moving into various parts of our city, but have been put off by 2 things that come to mind: is 1, beggars, and 2, the state of the shops. And so I think this is a great remit. I'm keen to hear what others think. Kia ora.
Councillor Shaw, and then Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, I also support this remit as well. I can only think of our Nainai shopping area, where we put in a beautiful Te Māko community centre, Nainai Pool coming. And then there's a large number of derelict shops as well, and we have no levers to do anything about it. So I certainly support this remit as well.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor Shaw has stolen my words. I was going to bring Nainai up. Great area there. We are totally constrained by not being able to get hold of owners and so forth, where the area itself is falling to pieces. So this is a great remit to put forward.
Yeah, I certainly agree with all those comments. Any opposing view? No? Okay, so we'll say yes. Remit 7, appropriate funding models for central government initiatives. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Remit 8, goods and services tax sharing with local government. Yeah, we're not going to be I'm not sure if it's a remit. It was part of our local government response to the local government report that was done last year. Yeah. Councillor Mitchell?
Yeah, I was just going to comment on the same thing, and maybe this is a discussion for the floor, that Local Government New Zealand, with the support of its member councils, supported a whole suite of changes under that local government reform thing, and it seems now we're cherry picking a couple because we couldn't get them all across the line. Some councils are cherry picking particular ones, and where there should be a discussion about a more consolidated approach to where to from here. Now that as a whole, as a package, that's pretty much been rejected by the government. What are our key focuses in terms of those recommendations and which ones we want to get over the line? And it sounds like it's also crossing into that Nick Smith conversation that we heard about earlier, 4-year terms and things like that. So yeah, it feels like councils are now picking apart that broad piece of work, and some councils have picked bits to put in here, but whether there needs to be a broader discussion at conference or AGM about how we move forward in a consolidated way and what are our collective priorities out of those things if we can't have them all.
I think it's a really good suggestion. Might say it's the idea of the Vice President. No, it's good. If you're happy to send me an email on that, that would be, I think it's good. Yeah, I'll give you the credit. Councillor Dyer?
Well, now it sounds bad because you've just said that it was your idea, but I actually thought this was probably one of the weakest funding options that was put forward as part of the LG. It's definitely the easiest probably to sort out from a process point of view. It's a pretty fixed number that every council's already got, but it's still such a small amount of money. It's not anywhere close to what we need. Also, there's still the incentive that the more you put up the rates, the more GSTs collected, the more money you're going to get. So you're kind of still in this weird loop where we need alternative revenue sources, not ratepayers. While this is giving some of the money back to us that ratepayers are paying us, it's not really addressing the issue. So I think that wider discussion around we'll support this as one, but there are many others that need to happen alongside this.
I've got a great idea. We could oppose this one and everyone would be like, what? And then on the floor we can talk why we oppose it. And Councillor Dyer, it's going to be your job. Okay? How does that sound? No, I think it's work because it's a good way to make the point. Because if we can get anything, we'd take it. But actually, we need to be more strategic. And yeah. So how are we comfortable with that approach? It forces the debate. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dyer. Okay. So we oppose H. Great. Okay, so we'll move to the recommendations. Okay, we'll put them up on the screen. Yep. Okay, so we'll put up these recommendations, and we can change C and D if we want to, but I just wouldn't get too hung up on this. We get certainly hear what everyone's saying. So we just say we'd support in principle, but allow the delegates to vote and give them that flexibility. Or do we want some language to better reflect? Is that okay? Councillor Salinger, just checking because I don't know that we're still saying we support in principle.
Yeah. If my vote against 4D could be recorded.
Yep. Okay.
Otherwise, I support everything.
Yep. Great. We will put I will put A through all of the recommendations except for D. All those in favour say aye. Seconded by Councillor Briggs. All those in favour say aye. Those against, no. Declare that carried. And item D, I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Briggs. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. And we'll record Councillor Stallinger. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Declare that carried. Moving through to council minutes. And we have the council minutes from the 17th of May, 28th of May, 4th of June, 27th of June. Anything from any of those minutes? No? Okay, so I'll move them. Do I have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Lewis. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Item 10, committee minutes without recommended items. So we have the LTP, page 269, from the 15th of May, 17th of May, and 4th of June, all on different pages. Is there any questions on those minutes? Deputy Mayor Lewis?
Just a comment for page 274. The Petone Save the Wharf group tabled a petition, not submission. So just a change in that wording.
And we also, please note that there is an amendment to the minutes on page 312 of the agenda. It should read that Councillor Barrett expressed support for including the Sister City program funding in the LTP and not Councillor Morgan. Cool, so we got that. Thank you for sending that through. And in addition, Councillor Deputy Mayor Lewis's amendment. With those amendments, I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Shaw, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. B, which is the Audit and Risk Subcommittee, page 328 from the 25th of June. I'll move it. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stallinger, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Climate Change and Sustainability Committee, Councillor Briggs.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the minutes of the Committee Kaupapa Taio, the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee meeting held on the 2nd of July 2024 be adopted. They are pages 338, 341.
I have a seconder. Councillor Parkin, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Communities Committee, Communities Culture and Partnership Committee, I should say, from the 3rd of July. Councillor Brown.
Kia ora. I move that the minutes of the Komiti Hapori Ahurea me ngā Rangapu Communities, Culture and Partnerships Committee meeting held on the 3rd of July 2024 be adopted from pages 342 to 355.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. District Plan Review Committee from the 4th of July. Councillor Dyer.
Kia ora. I'd like to move that the minutes of the Komiti Arataki Mahiri Rohi, the District Plan Review Committee meeting held on the 4th of July 2024 be adopted. These are on pages 356 to 362.
I have a seconder. Deputy Mayor Lewis. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Moving through to the Sealing Authority, which is on page 363. So I'll move recommendations 1, 2 and 3. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brown. All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Questions? I've received no questions. We now move to exclusion of the public. So I'll move that the public be excluded from the following parts of proceedings, namely items 14, 15 and 16, and they are minutes. So I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morgan, any discussion? All those in favour say aye. Those against no. Declare that carried. Declare the public part of the meeting closed at